Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Premiership Quarter. Today, I'm going to be doing my overrated team for the 2024 season. This is going to be essentially a part two to my overrated team, and it's going to consist of very similar things, where it's going to be part of the media and how they rate players. It's going to be my thoughts on how good a player actually is, part of how I thought their performances were in 2023 and what I think their performances might be in 2024. We will also, again, be starting with their fullbacks, and the two that I have in the underrated team are Callum Wilkie and Tom McCartan. I think the reason I've put Wilkie in here is because there have been two lists recently, one from ESPN and the other being Mark Robinson, who did not include the starting All Australian defender in their top 50 AFL players. Ridiculous. If you think this is a homer pick, you are simply wrong. He was in my opinion, best key defender last year across all games. He was the best lockdown defender out of last season, and he developed his intercept game to the point where he was the number one key defender. If Sam Taylor played all games, would he have made it over him? Sure, but he didn't. And the fact that Wilkie got snubbed from both lists is utterly ridiculous. The reason I've got Tom McCartan in this team is because I think his importance to Sydney's team sort of being overlooked a little bit. I talked about it in my Sydney Swans season predictions video, but if he gets even a 3 week injury, I don't see the Swans winning any of those games unless they're against North and Hawthorn twice somehow, which wouldn't happen. I think they'd really struggle to lock down anyone when he is not fit, and he is also just a great player when he's playing. I think he's probably top three in terms of their most important pieces structurally, and if he does not play more than 20 games this season, I won't have the Swans making the top eight. My two more medium sized defenders are Brody Kemp and Jed Hughes. The reason I have Kemp in this team is because a lot of Carlton's success defensively last season was given to Wiedering, and fair enough. But I think Brody Kemp had a great case to be just as important as what Wiedering was. He's an undersized second key defender, and with him and McGovern being more two medium-sized defenders, being able to play on those second tools, I think they did a great job, and he really wasn't talked about enough. So that's why I've got him in my team. And then Jed Hughes, I just think he's been an under-talked about piece in Geelong's system for a few years now. He's great in one-on-ones. He's able to take your aerial smalls as well as your more pressure smalls, and I think is great versatility wise for Geelong's defense. Now, my halfback flanker, I've got Connor McKenna. I think he was an underrated piece for Brisbane's team last season, especially in the back half. I think he really stepped up his game. And I just don't think, with how good Caden Coleman played in the grand final, his performances were valued enough. And then the last player in my defense is Ed Richards, and I think he has every chance of making the All Australian 44-man squad this season. A lot of people think Connor Iden would or Isaac Quainer would, but I think Ed Richards has just as good, if not a better chance than what they would, and I don't think it's getting talked about anywhere near as much as what it should with how good he actually is. My two wingers in this team are Liam Henry and Bailey Scott. I'll start with Bailey Scott. I just think he's one of the more unheralded players in North's team, and it is difficult to give props to a player who is in arguably the worst team over the last 4 seasons. But I just think his performances have gone under the radar heavily, and I'm sure North fans would rate him, but I think in my fantasy team at least, he always performs well. And so I've gone back and looked, and he has been pretty good for them as well in terms of eye watching with the eyes. So I've got him in the team. And then Liam Henry, watching that preseason game just made me think, how did Fremantle let him go for anything less than a first round pick? He was electric, and St Kilda do not need to develop him in any sense. He just comes over as a product that can only get better, and we don't need to put all the hard work in. We can just provide the finishing touches to his game, and I think he will be superb for us this season. My forward line that I've chosen, The two keys are Ben King and Oscar Allen. The reason I've put Ben King here is because he struggled a lot recovering from his ACL last season, and he was very inconsistent. His best game was probably against Brisbane, I think it was, where he was played as a defensive forward on Harris Andrews and was able to kick goals off him. But I think this season, with a full season under his belt, having a consistent key forward in Lukosius and a good key forward in terms of size, either Casbolt or Jed Walter, it'll really help him. And under Damien Hardwick's new system, I think he very well could match someone like Tom Lynch's productions in the 2019 season. The other is Oscar Allen, and I think the fact that he's a leader at this young age for West Coast and the fact that they were so bad just meant nobody really cared about them. And I just think his performances were really good last season. And I think he can absolutely push for a 44-man squad selection this year if West Coast can be any better. My two medium forwards are Tim Membry and Will Hayward. Tim Membry is just a biased pick. He's my favourite player, and I just think his game is not talked about a lot, which is understandable anyway. The other one is Will Hayward, and I talked about in my Sydney video that I think he is the most underrated piece. Tom McConnell I put because the media doesn't cover him, but I think Will Hayward does a lot of things that the media think Isaac Heaney does. And I just think he is super important to that Sydney team, and he makes their forward line function just as much as what Heaney would. Now, my two small forwards are Sam Switkowski and Ben Ainsworth. Switkowski wasn't talked about a lot last season. A lot of the talk was on Lockie Schultz, and that's fair enough because Lockie Schultz is a super player. But I think Switkowski, in the role he plays, is arguably in the elite category. He's a great pressure forward. He's extremely quick and extremely athletic, and he's a real nightmare for running defenders to be able to shake off. And then Ben Andrews, the other one, because I think he is an All Australian smoky. Under the new Hardwick system, as that forward midfielder, we've seen what Bolton can do, we've seen what Martin can do, and I think he's probably closer to a Bolton, but he's got more of the size of a Dustin Martin. Not actually the size of Dustin Martin, but he's closer to Martin than he is Bolton. And I'm really excited to see what he can produce this year. Now my rock is Bailey Williams. Again, West Coast dog shit. Nobody wants to talk about him. Fair enough. But he was actually really good for them last season. And I think with Matt Flynn's injury now, he will have to once again take that number one ruck. It'll be interesting to see if he is able to perform to the same standard. And if he is, maybe he's their number one future ruckman instead of someone like Matt Flynn. Now, my midfield is Jai Simpkin, Ben Hobbs, and Brad Crouch. A lot of the talk about North Melbourne's midfield is the younger players. George Wardlaw's talked about a lot as a rising star favourite. LDU is probably seen as their best midfielder, but I think Jai Simpkin is what makes their midfield click. He's not talked about to the level of the other two, but I think he's just as good, and that's why I've got him on my team. Ben Hobbs I've got because I think I talked about it in my overrated team that I don't think Parrish is going to be that good. Well, not that good, but I don't think he's the number one midfielder, and I think Ben Hobbs can be that. He is a superb player when he plays. He has been a bit injury prone as of late, but hoping he gets over that, I think he has the potential to be the number one midfielder on that team because he can be a superstar. And then the last one is Brad Crouch because I think he was the third best player for St Kilda last season, and he probably could have made the All-Australian 44-man squad. I think he's in the same category as a Tom Liberatore, and nobody talks about him as it is. He probably should have polled a bit better in the Brownlow, but he didn't. And so I just included in my team as a bit of a biased pick again. I do like the Saints. There's probably a couple too many in this team, but oh well. That's my thoughts on the most underrated team. Leave yours in the comments below if you agree. If you think there's too much Saints bias in this team, there probably is, but oh well. Again, deal with it. My opinions, not yours. So leave yours in the comments below. Like the video if you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.